What do you live for? Do you live for the laughs, the I love yous, the late nights, the early mornings, the adventures, the tears, the cold nights, the sunrises, the sunsets, the long drives, or the rush of a first kiss? Now close your eyes. What have you lived through? The heartbreak, the pain, the hurt, the loss, the fear, the rejection, the never-ending bad days, the numbness, or the loneliness. Now open your eyes. My sister once told me that life, it's not easy, but nothing worth anything comes easy. I believe our minds are the most powerful things on this earth, but when your mind turns against you, what do you do? For some people, the words mental health simply mean your happiness and well-being. To others, like myself, these two words mean absolutely everything. My name is Katie, this is my story, but I can't tell you mine without telling you theirs.
Elementary school, I had like a couple friends, but I was bullied a lot, mainly because of my weight. And I was like a normal kid, like normal size for my height. But I was just bullied. And I have like this perfectionistic, I'm a perfectionist for sure. So I wanted everyone to like me, and I wanted to look the best, and like I just wanted to be perfect. And so it's like I thought that was like the one thing that was wrong with me, was my weight. And so that's kind of when I started to say, okay, like I want to start losing weight. And that was when I was 10. I remember like crying to my mom, just begging her to let me go on a diet. And of course she was like, you're 10 years old, like why would you want to go on a diet? So we just started like eating healthier and stuff, but I kind of took that to an extreme. So that's when I started restricting and like cutting out foods, and just like slowly started losing more and more weight. And I kind of got like reinforcement from it. People were saying, oh my gosh, you look so good, like you look so tiny, just like people at school, teachers, like that kind of stuff. And that just kind of fed it. I remember going to the doctor, and I had lost quite a bit of weight, but that wasn't like, I don't know, they didn't diagnose me with an eating disorder right away. It was more anxiety, and that was just a result of my anxiety. I remember I was in 6th grade, and I actually like passed out at school. And I was like super malnourished, dehydrated, and I passed out at school. And that was when I was brought up to primary children's for the first time, and they looked at me and they were like, what the fuck? Like, what is wrong with this girl? And that's when I got the diagnosis of anorexia. And that kind of is what started it all, because I didn't even really think I had like a big problem. But it was when I was in the hospital and they set down a plate of food in front of me and were like, okay, then like eat. If you don't have a problem, then eat. And I couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to eat. And that was also the first time that I got put into an acute care unit. So when I was 11. And honestly, since then, it was just bouncing in and out of hospital stays to be medically stabilized, and then going into acute units, inpatient treatment, residential treatment, outpatient, day treatment. It was just a cycle and just kept repeating. And I don't know why. I don't think I wanted to get better. It was just comfortable for me. I just kind of kept doing the same cycle over and over.
It is amazing when people come in and say, I've been depressed for 5 years and there's no way I'm not gonna be depressed. And I've been to 5 therapists and it's not gonna happen. And then we talk about, maybe you weren't ready then, you know? I say all the time that therapists all go through the same training. We all have the same schooling, books, etc. But each one brings their own unique background, their own experiences, right? So how many different jobs you've had, what you've done before, your age, your life, how you choose to spend your energy. And so what I don't think people know is that therapy is about you. So if you cannot connect with the therapist or the treatment provider or the medical doctor, whoever it is, then you need to advocate for yourself and find somebody you do connect with. So if you don't feel like you're being heard, you're not in the right space, because you won't do the work. You won't be open, you won't be willing to make yourself vulnerable or to hear things if you're not in the right space.
I still struggle every day. It's still like a daily choice for me to choose recovery, because even though I'm healthy and I'm fine and I eat all day long, I eat a lot of food and I go to the gym and I work out and all that stuff, it's like I still have to face those thoughts every day. Honestly, like, it was a blur. Everything just kind of blends together in those years. I don't really remember a whole lot because I was just so in my head. Like, I feel like I was just not a part of society at all. Like, I was just so consumed in my eating disorder, so consumed in myself, what I looked like, the food, like everything like that. It was like I was just not here.
I work as a clinical mental health therapist. I work primarily with young adults who are transitioning into the real world. So a lot of them are coming from an inpatient setting or some sort of structured setting, and this is their next step to transition into real life. I work with a lot of individuals that have depression and anxiety, substance abuse, a little less common, but we still see quite a bit of eating disorders and personality disorders, different things like that. But I would say primarily depression and anxiety are huge components that I see in almost every one of the clients that I work with.
My mindset was just so focused on the eating disorder that nothing else mattered. So my last treatment stay was when I was 19, and I was in Oklahoma. And it's very different being in like an adult treatment center than like a child one. So when I was 18, that was my first time in an adult one, and then I was 19, I went back, and it just gives you a different perspective. Like, there's women there who are like 50 years old, and I kind of was thinking to myself, like, do I want to be like this when I'm 50 years old? Like, is that what I want my whole life to be? And I remember getting out of that center when I was 19. I started going back in the same cycle, losing weight, restricting, all that kind of stuff. And then I don't know why, I just started going to the gym. Like, that was just my thing. And at first I kind of hated it, and my parents were like, what are you doing? I started going to the gym, and like I said, I hated it, but that's kind of how I justified eating food. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the gym. I have to eat if I want to go to the gym. And I actually started enjoying the gym after a while. And so it was like, okay, that was kind of like my thing, like my trade-off. Like, I started liking the gym, so I'm gonna go to the gym, and I have to eat if I'm gonna go to the gym. And so then that's kind of like how it started. And I basically was like self-taught. Like, I taught myself everything I know. I read so much stuff on bodybuilding.com. Like, that was like my Bible. I would just read forums all day long and just study it, and becoming more obsessed with building muscle and being healthy and like building a body that I loved and that I was proud of, instead of just focusing on like how little I could eat, how skinny I could get, like how small I could be. After a couple of years, I started posting stuff on Instagram and got sponsored by a company. And so it was like things just started kind of falling in my lap with fitness. And I was like, wow, like this is something that I could actually go somewhere with and like share my story, because fitness is something that saved me. But when I very first started posting on Instagram, it was a transformation, kind of showing me at one of my like sicker points to where I was, and that was a couple years ago. So it was like, I was pretty new into it, but I was like, you know what, I'll see what kind of feedback I get from this. And that's when I started posting more consistently, because I got really good feedback, and there were so many people that reached out to me or like, I'm struggling with the same thing. Like, and this sounds awful, but I kind of like forget why I started my Instagram account. And that was like the whole reason I started my Instagram account. I'll look at the content I'm posting now, and it's like, it's cool content. It's me at the gym, it's me doing like photo shoots, whatever it is. But kind of coming back to the root of why I started it. So a lot of like Transformation Tuesday, like that kind of stuff. And so that's where I'll pull out the old pictures. It's hard. It's kind of emotional to like look through like my camera roll or my computer and like find these pictures when I was so sick, and it's crazy, yeah.
But it's like emotionally draining to look back and remember all of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you probably feel extremely good about it too.
Yeah.
It's like, look how far I've come.
Yeah.
Like, talk about that feeling, like your mindset right now.
I mean, there's just like, there's a lot that goes into that, but like, it's just crazy to me because like I was told by so many people that like I would never get better and that I was gonna die, and like my family was kind of just at a loss. Like, they didn't know what to do with me. They honestly thought they were gonna lose their daughter so many times, and it's like, it's just crazy to me that I'm even alive right now. And so like, I am really proud of myself and like everything that I've done, because like I can say that I did it. Like, no one else did it for me. It was something that I had to like muster up the courage to do myself. And so that's something that I'm super proud of. One of the biggest things is that like I'm healthy enough to get out of bed and do the things that I want to do and the things that I love to do. Like, being free to do what I want. I mean, other than like school and work and stuff, it's like, I feel like I'm free. Like, I'm in charge of my own life. I can do what I want, and I don't really have anything stopping me. So, yeah.
What advice would you give to people that have been through or are going through a similar situation to the one that you went through?
That, I think, kind of referring back to what I said, is that like I did it myself, but you have to do it yourself. You have to find the reason why you want to get better, because there can be so many people, like if you're in treatment or if you're seeing a therapist, like outpatient and stuff, it's like they can tell you a million times it's so much better if you are healthy and all this stuff. But it's like, I got told that so many times, and I was like, no, like, you guys don't understand. Like, you don't get why I want to do it. And it's just, you have to like dig deep inside yourself and realize why you want to get better, because if you don't want to get better, you won't. And that was like the biggest thing that I realized, is for the longest time I didn't want to get better. And it was like, you have to find the reasons why you want to, and why, like, your reasons to live, the things that you want to live for. And if you can just keep repeating those and make those seem more important than the eating disorder.
In the beginning of 2018, I lost myself. Honestly, I think I lost myself a long time before that, but that year was the first time I admitted it. Depression, anxiety, alcohol abuse, and an eating disorder. I was losing my mind, and no one knew a thing for the longest time. January of 2018, I attempted suicide for the first time. I had bad social anxiety. I found comfort with a bottle of vodka, tequila, or just about anything that would make me into someone I wasn't. Every party, every hangout turned into me hugging the toilet, crying. People thought this was funny. I thought this was normal. I was developing an alcohol abuse disorder that I still struggle with to this day. A low point? Chugging a bottle of champagne and rum on Thanksgiving in my room so I could be social enough to talk to my family. I would tell more, but the worst ones I honestly can't remember.
just recently moved to Utah about a year ago. I was actually taken here. So when I turned 17, it was like 2 days after I was taken here to a wilderness therapy program up in Kanab. And I was there for like a couple months, went home. And then this past January of last year, I was sent back, taken back again. And I went to the same wilderness again, and then I went to my therapeutic boarding school. So I've kind of been like, I was in Utah and left and then came back. But the main reason I came up here at all was therapy reasons.
How was that?
I mean, it was hard. Being sent away isn't fun. The experience wasn't fun. They call it like being gooned, and I hate it, honestly. I think that people have good intentions, most of them, but I feel like if you're the one being like taken from your home, it's not easy. You're not being able to say goodbye to your parents. I couldn't say goodbye to my dog, and I freaking love her. Like, that's hard, like my little sister, and like, I don't know, I'm really close with my twins, so that killed me to leave. I mean, I was bullied when I was a really young kid, and then I was diagnosed with ADD and dyslexia, and for me that was really hard because I just started to like label myself as those things.
People want an explanation, so when they come in and they talk about what's going on with them, they want to know the label. And I often ask, well, what does the label mean? If I tell you, yes, you are generalized anxiety, if I tell you, oh yes, you are major depressive, what does that mean to you? And they say they just want to be able to identify with something, because then if it has an explanation and a name to it, then they can breathe and say, okay, I'm not going crazy, which is the default for most people. I'm crazy. I spend a lot of time and energy talking to people about the terms and the verbiage they choose to use with themselves. So first of all, in all of my time doing this, and even with the most mentally ill people with the schizophrenia and the substance abuse, I have not met many people that are crazy. Yet we use the term very loosely all the time. And we use it with ourselves. So it's not like we're using it on somebody else. We use it with ourselves, and then when we get in relationships and in our environments, people use it loosely, and it gets internalized quite a bit. So reframing and changing verbiage and actually owning what you say, not only for yourself, but with others, makes the awareness much stronger, and it shifts the thinking significantly, which I think is super valuable to know how to manage then how the story, I call it the story we tell ourselves.
Throughout elementary school and into high school, I'd been bullied. It was bad. People would tell me to kill myself and give me ways to do it, like almost every other day at school. And so going to school, I dreaded that every day. My parents didn't know why I didn't want to go because I couldn't tell them. That definitely cost me a lot of issues and pain. Feeling like I had no safety net was really hard. Moving into high school, there was trauma with boys. And that was really hard because I was accused of lying about it, or accused, people called me a slut or a hoe or things like that because somebody found out that something happened with this guy, but it wasn't my choice. And so I had to, and it was put on social media too, and it was one of my closest friends that had kind of turned on me at the time.
On social media?
Yeah.
Somebody posted up about you?
Yeah, this friend was commenting about it, and then other people from my school commented on it, and then the guy saw it, and people were giving me looks at school, and so I didn't want to go. I don't know, I remember going to my sister, and my heart was pounding, and I was sobbing look at this, what the fuck is going on? Why is she doing this? I'm so scared that he's gonna see this, and I'm just so sad, and it was terrifying. I didn't know what to think of it. So many thoughts were going through my mind, blaming myself and pissed at this girl for turning on me. I cared about her so much, and I've never done anything to hurt her. She didn't even come and ask me first, and that was hard. I had tried to message her separately, and then she screenshotted that and then posted that. And so you know, my privacy is already being like fucking known to everybody, and then she comes in and then she like does even more to make it worse, and then it gets brought to school, and then I'm even pulled into the office and talked about it.
My name is Doug Gray. I'm a professor of psychiatry at the University of Utah, and I'm a suicidologist. Every person you meet, if you made them really think about it, they were bullied at some point. Everybody. But if it's I don't know, if it's similar to what's happening to other kids and it's within somewhere on the bell curve, and if you have some resilience and some ways to, if you've got parents you can talk to or friends, you can probably work through a lot of that. And then there's some of it which is, you know, intensive and cruel and difficult that can scar a person, right? And then some of the cyberbullying, which I didn't have, you know, we didn't have that problem when I was a kid, where whatever rumors going around can be multiplied across hundreds of people, can be devastating for a young person. And so that's something new form of bullying that can be devastating.
After it, I just felt completely like alone. I already felt alone, but I felt so alone and on my own, and like I didn't have any friends, or no one really understood what was going on for me. I just felt really embarrassed going into school, and like people were looking at me, and it was just uncomfortable.
How did you feel about yourself during the time?
Horrible, disgusted. You know, it came to a point where I started to believe those words that were said about me, and you know, believe that, you know, I am fucking around with this guy, but I didn't. And it got to the point that it was so bad that I was taking out on myself every day, and I wasn't allowing myself the space to really, you know, acknowledge that that was something I had no control in. This isn't on me, and I shouldn't hate myself for it.
I think in recent years, more people have been willing to open up about it because our culture is starting to talk about it in a different way. And I think in the media, it's starting to gain more attention as celebrities are open about their mental health challenges, and they are giving people permission to talk about what's real. So I think that there's always been the same amount of people that are struggling. I just think that people are learning that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to ask for help. I think so many mental health issues stem from bullying, or, you know, especially cyberbullying, or people being mistreated in some way, sometimes by their own family, you know, their parents or their siblings or people that they, you know, expect to trust have been the ones that have caused them the most pain. And I think that's even harder to work through.
I wasn't taking care of myself. I got like into substances and was drinking every weekend and going to parties every weekend, sneaking out and lying, giving up in school, giving up on myself, constantly arguing with them. Our relationship was very, very bad, and my mom saw it, and she saw that it wasn't just what I was doing, but it was what was underneath that you know, is scary for a mom to see. And for me, that took me a while to understand. I'm grateful for it because I don't want this life for myself. I'm tired of it. It doesn't feel good, and it scares the shit out of me. And I just kind of turned things around, and having that mindset really got me somewhere. My relationship with my family is really, really good. Me and my dad, you know, I was talking to my therapist about this. That's the biggest change I think in my life I've had. Not only with myself, but with him. I had so much hate for him because, you know, I saw so much of myself in him and I hated myself that it was hard to, you know, it was hard to hug him or tell him I love him when he went to work.
How do you feel about yourself right now?
I don't know. Every day is really hard. And it's not that it's hard, it's just a constant reminder that, you know, long down the road, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm gonna get to a good place. I'm gonna stay on this good path. And I try to tell myself every day that I'm a good person because I believe that I am, and I don't think that I'm a problem anymore. Like, moving forward right now, my relationships are so good and so healthy, and there's times that I argue with my family, like, who doesn't, but it's healthy, and I trust them, and I feel trusted by them, and it's been such a hard process and such a hard time getting to this place and continuing it, but I feel so much more happier, and like I feel very healthy and confident moving forward with myself and things that I have going for me and the relationships that I have.
The cutting started in January, stopped in March, and I relapsed again in February. It made me feel good to have control over something, to have that one thing that could temporarily take away my pain. I cut my left wrist. Wearing a jacket in 100-degree weather at school so people wouldn't see the scars got really tiring. I know people saw the scars. No one ever said anything. I honestly don't know if that was worse or better. When cutting my wrist became too obvious, my parents would hide the knives and scissors at night, so I began cutting my thighs. I've never told anyone that.
So I started drinking when I was like 15. I'd say like the first drink I was at this guy's house. I was a freshman in high school, and I was obviously raised like not to do those kind of things, and so it was kind of scandalous. And this guy's parents would let us drink at his house, and I remember like drinking, and it was Jack Daniels and Coke, and it was like an awesome experience because I was really nervous around this guy, like first boyfriend, and when I took that first drink, it was like all of my worriness had like disappeared, and it was like I was on cloud nine. Then I would say my addiction really started to kick when I moved in with this guy. I think I was 21, 22, and it was basically a trap house. Drugs were being sold there, and there was a bunch of alcoholics living there. There was always a gallon on the table, always drinking. At the time, I was a nanny, so I didn't really have a job that was like 9 to 5, and we were drinking 24/7, like all the time. But I definitely say that's when like my addiction started to like affect my life. I ended up dropping out of college, and essentially that's when everything went extremely downhill. Like I ended up moving in with my parents, getting different jobs like a hostess, that kind of thing where I could drink on the job. Like I was getting jobs and then losing them because I'd get fucked up one night, and then 2 or 3 days would go by where I'd just be drunk and I wouldn't show up to work, so then I would get too scared to even go back and confront them, so I would just never go back to that job, go get another bullshit job, and do the same thing over and over. At this point, the guy that I had been living with in the trap house had totaled my car, so my car's wrecked. I'm back living at my parents'. I'm like 23 at this time, and things just got like excessively worse and worse. I was just in the basement of my parents' house drinking 24/7. Like I would go to the liquor store at 11, my parents would be at work. I would get up around like 6, finish my bottle, try and sleep. Withdrawals start happening, and withdrawals are like insanely the worst feeling that you'll ever have, like when you're consistently drinking and your body's used to it. So I'd wait in my bed, shaking, shivering, throwing up, constantly throwing up until 11, and I'd walk my ass over to the liquor store, buy a bottle, and go home, and it was like I was so shaky at this point. Sometimes I'd like hardly make it to the liquor store because I was so shaky and weak because I hadn't eaten in like 2 days. So I get over to the liquor store, buy my liquor, come back to the house, and try and pour myself a shot. It's kind of going everywhere, and then take those 2 drinks, and within like 15 minutes, I'm normal. Like I'm back to not shaking, I feel good. I don't feel tipsy. I don't feel anything. I just feel normal.
I work a lot and primarily currently with anxiety and depression. I have an extensive background with addiction, so that would be drugs, alcohol, and pornography, as well as people who have a dual diagnosis, so they have a significant mental illness like schizophrenia and bipolar, as well as addiction issues. Until you've been in it, you can't really judge the hold that the abuser has over the victim. So it's similar with drugs and alcohol and pornography. You really do not understand unless you have had an addiction yourself, or you've had this experience, or you're involved in the field, how much that takes hold of your life. And until you are in the right space, and then you actually connect with somebody that you feel like is, able to take the journey with you, it's a lot of spinning wheels, and you burn out a lot of friends and support systems. You burn out families. You start getting involved in the legal system, and now people will start to feel hopeless.
And every once in a while, I would go hang out with some friends, and that's when I would do stuff like heroin and meth. A few times when I started re-dating that guy that I was living at the trap house with, we would shoot up heroin and meth. The first time shooting up heroin was like as your child and you're cold and your mom comes and wraps a blanket around you, like that's what it feels like. Like the most amazing feeling you'll ever have. But then you never get that again. Like ever. You can shoot up as much as you want and you will never experience that first time. And that's what everybody craves. The first time I went to rehab, I had that mindset of that eventually I will be able to drink. And I almost got 6 months, and then I did tell myself it's going to be okay. Like, I can do this. And 6.5 months later, I'm back in detox, like at square one, except for this time, 1,000,000 times worse. When they say each relapse is worse, that's 100% true. If I told myself this when I was a freshman starting to drink, that I would have done, like shot up meth, like almost overdosed on meth, I would never have thought that. It just progressively gets worse and you don't see it because you're messed up.
All of us, regardless of what we're struggling with, need support, need kindness, empathy, understanding. And so while I do agree that clients need to do a lot of hard work in order to manage their mental health, I don't think that anybody can do it alone. And it saddens me that we live in a culture where there are so many negative feelings about mental health, and individuals that seek support are often seen as weak because they're asking for help, when in fact I think that's one of the biggest strengths and something that I consider a huge growth opportunity for my clients. Rather than doing something impulsive or something that you're going to regret, give somebody a call, ask for help. I try to make it very clear from the beginning that I am here to be on their team. I'm here to support them. I'm here to listen. And I think as the process continues, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has hard days. And I always ask my clients to reach out for social support. Again, whether that's a friend or a parent or a professor at school, somebody that you trust that can help you through a difficult time.
But yeah, my parents have helped me through a lot, especially my dad. He's definitely my hero. He's done so much for me, like there's no way I could ever have done anything without him. He's saved my life like more than once. My sister's amazing. She always tried to pull me out of it. My little brother's just too young. He's just worried. I can definitely see a change in my family when I am doing good. We all get along, and When they say that addiction is a family problem, it is. The people that love you go through so much to see, and in your addiction, you don't understand that. Like, you feel like you're hurting yourself and only you. And you try and push away anybody that loves you because you don't want them to feel or see what's going on, but that even hurts them worse. And if I could tell anything to the people going through that with their family, is that they're not doing it on purpose. Like, the addiction takes over so bad, and you don't see it. And it's like, I don't know. It's just like really hard on everyone. But the people that are in the addiction are not trying to hurt anyone. They wish that everybody could just like go away, and they're just trying to hurt themselves, you know. Now that I've been 6.5 months sober, yes, thank you, thanks. It's like a really big deal because I've never gotten that. I've never gotten 6 months sober. And as good as it sounds to go out and have a drink or party, the things that I have now that I could not have when I was using is a really big influence on my choices that I make. When you're in your addiction, like, you don't see. It's so hard to explain, but you can't see out of what's going on. You're blind to that. And then when you get sober, it's so much like waking up out of a dream and like looking back, and it's like you can look back almost as if you're looking at a movie and seeing like how messed up it was.
My relationships got hit the hardest. I was a bad friend, a bad sister, a bad daughter, and a bad girlfriend, but in that moment, I promise, I was doing the best I could. Worse than any of these, I had a bad relationship with myself. I think the only thing more tiring than keeping up with myself was trying to keep up with the people who loved me. To the people who loved me and I couldn't keep up with, I'm sorry.
I've always loved like art, and that's been kind of like a therapeutic thing for me, and I feel like that was like a healthier way that I kind of was able to deal with like being a perfectionist and like really being mindful and in the moment of like focusing on like an art piece. And it pushes me, I think, a lot further than the average person because I'm like never satisfied, but then at the same time it's like I have to step back and be like, this isn't healthy. Like, it's okay if not everything is like completely perfect around me all the time or within myself. Because I was getting good grades, I was social, like I had a pretty balanced normal lifestyle, so my parents were like, it's fine. But I guess that's kind of where the shift kind of happened in my life, was once I was going through that like transition from like childhood to teenage years, and my fears had to mature, so I wasn't as afraid of like the dark or just those childhood things anymore. And now I was facing like, okay, how do I fit in socially? How do I feel accepted and noticed and loved? I love all my friends, but I was kind of in the friend group where it's like all the pretty popular girls. And even though maybe people thought that about me, I didn't. I always kind of felt like I was at like the bottom of the totem pole. And I think every girl and even guy, like it's a hard time of life when you're in high school and you're wanting to be accepted and you want people to notice you and appreciate you. And I didn't feel that. And even though to the outsider, like people were constantly telling me how talented I was, like I was a soccer player, like people were always telling me I was beautiful, like I was hearing all these things from people, but it didn't matter because like I didn't feel that way. And so it just was like there was this disconnect. My freshman year of high school, it was like the fall was actually like one of my favorite times. It was a super good, awesome it was scary. When you start high school, it's terrifying. But I was playing soccer. I was suiting up for varsity, which is like not really common for a freshman. And I guess to the outside and even to myself, it seemed like I was just like, everything was good. Like I was social, I was popular, I was great at soccer. Like all these things are going for me. And I don't know, it's so interesting, kind of just, this is a pattern that's occurred throughout my life, is once it gets kind of colder and the fall comes, my mental health seems to transition with the times. I've always dealt with like body image issues and just kind of being like, just very within myself, not feeling okay physically. And I think it's now I know it's because I've never felt like calm within my body internally. And I think I kind of translated that as well. If I felt okay about my body or my image, things would feel okay on the inside. Little did I know that's not how it works. Before I went through puberty, I kind of had like a little bit of a chunkier phase. And then like once like I got into middle school, I just like leveled out at a healthy weight. And I was like a very just average, normal. I mean, I was never like the super skinny petite girl, but I was like active, I was strong. People would constantly compliment me on like my strong athletic build. And I guess in my head, I was like, oh, that means I'm like stocky and like manly and all these things. And so I just internalized all these things. So that was kind of like a ghost of my past that kind of stuck with me, like that I don't think I grew out of. Like I still kind of saw myself as like the chubby prepubescent girl. That's kind of where it just kind of started. And I didn't know much about nutrition and anything like that. I just knew like eat healthier, move more, lose weight. I started to just every day, because I'm constantly like have this need to do more and be better. It just escalated really, really fast. And before I know it wasn't just about like only eating healthy foods. It was like throwing away half my lunch to throwing away my entire lunch to not eating at all the whole day to going 2 days without eating. Like it just spiraled out of control so fast. Nobody knew how to handle this. None of my friends really knew what was going on. They just would like see my behaviors like, why doesn't she eat lunch with us anymore? Like, and obviously they were concerned about how like quickly my body was changing. And so they kind of started like talking to my sister, who's a couple years older than us, and they were going home and like expressing to their moms like how they were worried. And so then their moms were talking to my mom, and it just all of a sudden it was like everything was changing around me, and I wasn't being treated like Emily anymore. I was like this problem to everybody. But in this weird twisted way, that's what I needed at the time. Even though it was a negative attention, it was like something. So now I wasn't just this like unnoticed girl. I was getting attention for something. And so that just built upon the addiction, and it was the one thing that made me feel like I had an identity in this world.
Some people feel better if they have a label and can understand and appreciate it. And sometimes we get labeled or we self-diagnose, and it's not nearly as accurate as it would be beneficial.
One day, and I was at PE, I'd like passed out, just things were very, very bad with my health, and my mom took me to the doctor, and I had lost like 25 pounds in a month. And I started at a healthy weight. So I was like now underweight, and it just was like rapid that my body couldn't catch up with it. And my doctor was like, they have a room for you at Primary Children's Hospital, like you're being admitted. And I just remember in that moment being like, is this a joke? Like I'm not that thin. Like I know I've lost weight, but like everything's fine. Like I just was like super in denial, didn't think I had a problem. I didn't find any enjoyment in life. Like the only thing that was giving me any remote like temporary satisfaction was just like getting thinner. And so that was like the only thing I felt like I had to hold on to that brought me instant or joy. So then it just like spiraled because I wasn't finding anything else to bring me happiness. In those moments, there's times where I would be sitting in the doctor's office and it was like I was possessed. Like I would be screaming and kicking just because it was like this illness inside of me that was just so afraid of changing that it totally made me change who I was. And there would be times where I'd be like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't me, but it was completely fear. And so I was able to get my body physically to like the lowest of like a healthy BMI. And so it was this really hard mourning period for me because I no longer was like, it was obvious I was sick. It was hard because physically I was at a healthier place, but mentally none of it had been fixed. And I think for a long time I thought, because this illness is so focused on your weight, I thought, well, once I get to a healthy weight, my brain will start working better again and everything will be fixed. But now it was like I was even more lost and more depressed and more confused. I didn't have this thing to hold on to anymore and to give me an identity. And I was kind of dealing with these like old traumas of like trying to take care of myself on my own. And I was kind of going from being like extremely restrictive to then I was kind of starting to deal with binge eating, which is like a really common thing when your body starts to get out of that super restrictive mode. And I was like, I think my body was so physically traumatized from all the years of being super malnourished and underfed that it just always had this fear of when are you gonna let me eat next. So I just was dealing with these like binging tendencies, and I was like, where is this coming from? Like, my whole life it's been so easy for me not to eat, and all of a sudden I'm like dealing with finding like a middle ground here. And so that kind of became a new monster, and it kind of translated into bulimia, and I was dealing with that illness. And so I felt like I was kind of flip-flopping for a couple of years. I had like gotten myself to like I'd come a long way, but I was still struggling a lot. And I was like, I feel like I've been doing therapy and nutrition counseling for years, but I'm still not where I want to be. And so I kind of was like, I am choosing to put myself in a treatment center. And it always was like this threat, but I was like, I'm at a place now where this is something I want, and it's like my decision, and I think I could learn a lot from doing something like this. And so I like admitted myself, and I did it for about 3 months, and it was just the day treatment program, so I was able to still live at home, which was really nice. And I learned a lot from it, and I'm really grateful that I did it. But I don't know, since being out, it's been kind of this interesting thing. I've really just been focusing on changing my thought processes, which for so long I didn't even realize were skewed or off or whatever. And I think for the first time in my life, I'm like really accountable to my thoughts, and I'm able to step back for the first time ever and be like, that's not rational. Like, that's totally me being in my head. And I never really figured out the mental side of it all. I just was always so focused on my body aspect and be like, once I get my body to like a healthy place and balanced and I feel good, then everything will just be fine. But it was never like that. And honestly, it hasn't been until like the last year and a half that I have like really figured out it from like the inside out and like the mental side of it. I can't expect myself to ever like wake up and just be this. I really don't like the word recovery, because that means like the state of going back to something. And I've had to accept that I can never like get my pre-disordered mindset back. Like, I've just been through too much. I've lived, I've experienced, I've had traumas. Like, my mental mind and my physical body are never going to be able to just like flip back to like my 14-year-old normal mind, I guess. And so I think I've had to just realize that and be like, the past doesn't matter. It's all about how I keep evolving and take what I've experienced, what I've learned, and grow from that.
I am an artist. I'm genderqueer. I'm polyamorous. I'm vegan. Oh my god, I'm literally I'm a fucking meme, Jesus. I'm non-binary, which means I don't really identify with male or female. So a lot of days you'll see me, I'll be in fucking like men's clothes, and then a few minutes later I'll go change and I'll be like all fucking femme. Personally, I identify as transmasculine, which, I mean, doesn't really change that much about my life. For my whole entire life, I have always felt more masculine than what I was supposed to. And I went through fucking 14 years of Catholic school, so I was supposed to feel very different than I did. For polyamory, it's pretty much ethical non-monogamy, which is really just, I don't have one person. I have multiple people, but they all know about each other and we're all chill. So like, it works for me. It's not for everybody. It's interesting because I give people a new perspective, and a lot of people that weren't chill with polyamory or being non-binary, like they've been like, okay, like I get you, or I don't agree with you, but I respect you as a person, so do you. It just reminds me of how different I am to some people, because this is the most comfortable I've ever been in my body, that I've ever been with myself, and I forget that it fucking pisses some people off. Because I'm not what's average. Nothing about me has been what other people have wanted or expected. And in some ways, I kind of represent change. And it's a change that a lot of people aren't comfortable with yet. I was raised in a very Roman Catholic household. So I got cropped out of my family's Christmas cards. I stopped living at home when I was like 14. Part of the reason was because I needed treatment. Part of it was because it really wasn't safe there. But I have a family, you know. My fucking foster mom lives down in Provo, you know, and I've had the same best friend for 7 years. So that's where I have gone in the past for like Christmas, Thanksgiving, you know. I have a very unconventional family, but I am a very unconventional person, so it feels fitting.
Do you love who you are now?
I'm trying to, you know. There have been points where I haven't. Main reason that I'm in treatment was for a suicide attempt, and I have an eating disorder. That's just kind of where I'm at, you know, and I'm trying to be more comfortable in my body, and definitely how I present myself helps. But I mean, I've been 88 pounds, I've been 270, and either way looks like illness, you know. And it's finding that fucking balance, and it's finding a way that I can live in my body, and that's fine. And it's hard. It's really fucking hard some days, but other days, I'm happy. And that's really fucking new to me.
So some of the biggest risk factors for suicide are mental illness. You almost have to have a mental illness. But there are some families that have 5 generations of depression and no suicides. And then another family has 5 generations of depression, but they have suicides in every generation. So there's either a more lethal type of depression or other factors with depression that lead to suicide. Instead of waiting till someone has an illness and is struggling, which is important to help them, but go way back before that in grade school, junior high, high school, and provide better supports, help train kids to be more resilient, help them with their relationships so they have better relationships. And there are a number of competing programs that are being developed around the country that can sort of build mental health in a positive way in young people and reduce their risk of having an illness later.
2 years ago, I experienced a trauma, and my suicide attempt happened around the anniversary of it. But yeah, I mean,
A trauma you'd be willing to share?
I was raped. I actually used to be a very feminine person before. In August, I was fucking dead, you know? So my father found me unresponsive. I spent 3 days in the ICU, a couple more days in just the regular hospital, you know? A couple months ago, I didn't want to fucking live. And now I have a fucking home, you know, and shit's not perfect, but I wake up sometimes and I'm actually excited for my day. And that hasn't happened to me for years, you know, and it's not perfect, but it's a whole lot better than, you know, being fucking 6 feet under, so.
If you look around the world, the World Health Organization, the first thing people need is clean water, shelter, and food, that basic. And the next thing would be infectious disease, treatment of infectious diseases. And right after that, the World Health Organization says, right after that is mental health. That's what a big factor that is. It causes so much loss of productivity, but also so much misery for the people dealing with it. And we're so good at treating it now that to not get treatment is such a shame.
A lot of people I was supposed to come to this documentary like 6 hours before I did. And I was terrified that Katie would be angry at me because I was like, I can't do this right now. You know, I got maybe 2 hours of sleep last night and I had 2 panic attacks. And Katie gave me a fucking hug when I came in and was just like, hey, like pretty much was like, I'm glad you're here now. Like, let's go fucking document this. With my friends, with my partners, I've never had this level of care in my life. I spent my whole life thinking that I was bad. I spent my whole life hating myself for being different. I'm still different, but the difference is I have people that care about me regardless, that love me for who I am, and I've never felt this blessed. For me, I want to be a wilderness therapy guide. So the experience I had in Colorado, with backpacking but sad, I want to be one of those people that's helping others, you know. I want to give back, and if I can do that, if I can get to a place where like I'm able to do that, I can handle my own bullshit and I can handle like 12 other like people's, like that's it. That's all I want, you know. I just want to be in beautiful places with beautiful people and give back, you know.
What advice would you give somebody in a similar position as you without as much clarity right now?
I know your emotions are super fucking overwhelming. And I know that sometimes it feels like the end of the world. And all the bullshit that's happened to you, yeah, it feels unfair and it feels like you can't handle it. But handle it, because you have to. There's no other fucking option.
I got accepted into college, and for me, that was it. I was convinced things would be better. I would have access to alcohol, and I was strong enough to push my depression away and push my way through the next 4 years. 4 days into my time in school, I had been in the darkest place of my life. I remember looking in the mirror that night and telling myself this could all go away, that I truly believed I was not worth anything. That night, I overdosed on sleeping pills in my dorm room. 20 pills, 2 hours later, I was hooked up to machines at the hospital, drinking charcoal, wondering where the hell everything went so wrong. My parents drove 8 hours that night after they received the call that their youngest daughter tried to kill herself. I will never forgive myself for the pain I caused my family that night.
So I was born in St. George. My parents got divorced when I was 4. When they split up, my dad moved to Mesquite, Nevada. My mom moved here. My dad still lives in Mesquite. My mom now lives in St. George, so I'm a lone wolf here with Odie boy. I never had mental issues that I was aware of growing up. Right now, I have retroactive OCD, anxiety, and depression. I've worked through it a lot. It's a lot better, for sure. Growing up, my cousin had super bad anxiety. He had to go to therapy for it, and I never understood why he would get anxiety. It didn't make sense to me. I used to almost make fun of my cousin because he couldn't be home alone, and when we were hanging out, he couldn't even go to school, couldn't do anything, had to constantly call his parents. And I never understood that, and then probably 3 years ago, I started getting anxiety and I didn't know why. My OCD fuels the fire and makes issues arise that have never even existed.
If you grow up in an environment that feels chaotic, or if you grow up with a mother or a father that's high anxiety, so they stress a lot and their intensity is such then your environment when you're little, pre-verbal, and you don't really know how to explain things, is already that. And so you have kind of like this core feeling that goes on that you don't really know how to explain, and you may not think you have anxiety, but kind of your response is a learned behavior from your environment and who you've been surrounded by. One of the things that I truly enjoy is when I can take somebody who's struggled with anxiety and break it down for them, like, how is your household? How were your friends? How, who did you connect with the most, and how did they interact? How did they deal with these stressors? And they're like, oh yeah. And they can identify that maybe their environment was high anxiety. And then when they realize that, it's kind of almost like this awakening, like they might have some power over whether they feel anxious or not. And so then as they realize they might have some power, you apply some tools and practice, right? Because you've spent your entire life practicing what you lived in and what you've learned. And so you apply the practice with these tools, and it is amazing when somebody can feel free, even just for a moment, from something that they didn't even know was consuming their life. It's quite powerful. And then there's keywords, right? So people drop keywords all the time. So anxiety is a big one now. Panic attacks is a big one now. And as these keywords get dropped, people identify with it. Doesn't necessarily mean they're using it correctly, but they identify with it. It explains something they've been feeling and thinking. And then when you come in and you do some counseling, you have to break it down. What does a panic attack mean to you versus what it meant to somebody 3 hours ago or the person that came in yesterday? Because it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody.
I basically get trapped in my own mind, and I deep think, overthink, and think super negative about things that don't even exist or don't even matter, and I have no idea why. Just kind of tried to deal with it myself forever, but it is super, super hard because I don't talk to anybody about it. Like, I don't even know if most people know I have it. And I think I have it pretty extreme, and I think I'm pretty good at hiding it. But it's super frustrating because the littlest thing can give me so much anxiety because I only think about the worst situation, to the point where it led to suicidal thoughts. That over little things, which sounds absurd, but it's incredible. It really is how powerful your thoughts are.
So Utah, what you'll hear is Utah has a really high suicide rate for both adults and kids, and that's true. So if you just compare the U.S. rate to Utah, you're like, wow, what's wrong with Utah? But if you stop and compare the rate with Nevada and Colorado and Montana, we're all about the same. We're in that group of the states at the top for suicide rates, which is not where we want to be. But again, some portion of that is attributable to altitude. Obviously, firearm availability is a factor too.
Something so little can be like the most tragic thing, because you develop and create this in your own head to the point where nothing else matters. You don't care who you affect, and you lose sight of all the people that love you and what you should be grateful for and appreciate, and get to the point where you just want to end it. I didn't even know I had the issues until I had the suicidal thoughts. Which is kind of weird, because for all I know, I could have always had them, and they just weren't extreme enough for me to notice.
When you first felt that moment, or had those moments when you started feeling that way, what was your first reaction?
Before realizing it, I didn't care. When I finally broke out of the shell and realized, what the fuck am I thinking? Why would I even consider that? It made me feel sick. There are for example, all the people that have been interviewed, I'm just super lucky and I have nothing to complain about, essentially. And I was feeling sorry for myself. And when I tried not to feel sorry for myself and try to stay strong and try to work through it and say, hey, you know, people have it so much worse and would beg to be where I am. And for me to just think about giving up and doing something like that just because a bunch of little things added up to a breaking point, it just made me realize that I never understood how powerful anxiety can be.
And like part of it, you have to realize, like, it's weird to say it, but it's like everyone has different problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's always like there's always somebody in the world who's got it worse, but that doesn't discredit the problems you're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Because it's like that's something I've been learning is it's like just because somebody else has it worse than you doesn't mean your shit's not real.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I didn't even want to do this interview because I felt like I felt like I couldn't sit up here and talk about what I struggle with when people have it a lot worse.
But it's like, that's the thing is it's like crazy to think about it that way because it's like your problems are only yours, right? And other people's problems are only theirs. So your worst problems, like they are the worst problems.
I appreciate that. That's really eye-opening. That's incredible. I've never even looked at it that way because before you said that, I was just about to bring up how my cousin has super, super bad anxiety and feeling sorry for myself when I don't struggle with staying home alone or going to school. I'm like, wow, he has it way worse. I get a lot of anxiety about my future. Like I always felt like I was gonna die young for some reason. Not because of suicide or anything, but just die young in general. I just never pictured myself growing up, having kids, grandkids, and all that. And so, you know, I realized that when my mind gets stuck on one thing, my OCD just fuels the fire of that anxiety, and I only think about the worst possible situation. What if one day my wife and I can't afford to pay this? What if I don't make a lot of money? What if I don't prove myself right and I let everybody down and I'm talking and then it never happens? It's hard because I've never been close to my family. Like if I don't pick up the phone, nothing is gonna happen. They don't reach out to me. The worst thing you can tell someone is like, get over it, quit complaining, be strong, be tough, forget about it. Because in our minds, that doesn't help. Because I could try with all my might to not have anxiety, and it doesn't matter. So what I have to do is realize that thoughts really, they are things. What you think about, you bring about. And so, you know, I wake up in the morning and I think about what I'm grateful for. Gratitude has changed my life. It's the number one key attribute to having a positive life, I think. When you think about what you're grateful for, you're just so appreciative, so happy, and so positive because it's so easy to be negative. One negative thought in the morning can ruin your whole day, and one positive thought in the morning can make your day amazing. And so I started doing a lot more personal development, reading, watching mentors.
So my brother came out when he was 18, and I was 8, so I asked him to baptize me, and he was like, I can't baptize you, and he never told me why, and I was just pissed because I wanted him to baptize me. And then my parents told me that he was gay. I'm already gonna start crying. So he started doing drugs when he was 18, He started with Xanax and Percocets. And then after that, those started to get too expensive. So he raved for a little while and did ecstasy for some time. That was too expensive, so then he started drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes. And then after that, that cost a lot of money. After a while, he turned to heroin. He did that for probably 4 years on and off. But it's hard when you talk about drug addicts because a lot of people think that they're just like a carcass for drugs and they don't really have a personality, they don't have a job. But like everybody that came to his funeral, we probably had like 700 people at his funeral, 500 people at his funeral, and nobody had any idea that he did drugs. So it's just hard to watch these people at my job because everybody treats them like they don't have feelings or anything. But it's like, I don't know. It just definitely gives you a different perspective on people who do drugs or who have any sort of addiction problem because it's really a disease and it's not their fault. They never want it to be that way. You don't want to tell people that they're a drug addict because then they're going to judge them. And you're like, no, they're not your typical drug addict, but nobody's really your typical drug addict, you know what I mean? Everybody's completely different. He held a job, none of his friends knew. He always went to school. Nobody had any idea until his funeral. My dad gave his talk and kind of explained how it all happened. But so when he came out, we grew up very LDS, so he kind of grew up thinking he was going to go to hell and that nobody loved him and that all that kind of thing. My parents were great when he first came out and were like, we still love you, like we just want you to be happy, however you live your life, that's fine. Like we don't care that you like boys, it doesn't matter. So then after that though, by the time that my brother was actually okay with being gay and who he was, it was kind of too late because he had already tried to numb his anxiety and his emotions of not being accepted with drugs and alcohol. So by the time that he felt okay with himself, he was already kind of too far gone by that point. So it was just...
How long ago was this?
He passed away 5 years ago in 2 weeks.
And how old were you?
I was 18. I was a senior in high school.
And how was that?
It was really hard. I actually found him in our house, but it was a Sunday, and we had gone to Costco, and I came home from Costco, and they asked me to go get my brother for dinner, and I went into our basement because the TV was on, so I was like, oh, he's probably just in the TV room watching TV. So my room's down the hallway, his is across the hall from mine. And he was obsessed with TV, so he just always watched TV in the TV room. So I was like, oh, he's just watching TV. I just went in my room and started doing whatever I was doing. Came upstairs, my parents were home from Costco unloading the groceries. They're like, hey, go grab Brandon for dinner. And I was like, okay. So I walked downstairs, he's not in the TV room like I thought he was. I walked back upstairs and the bathroom door was locked, and I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. So I looked at my dad and I'm like, oh shit. So we like get the lock and unlocked the door, and I was the first one to go in there, and I was probably home for like an hour before, like my parents had gotten home before I realized that he wasn't downstairs. So we opened up the door and I walked in first, and he still had like the needle in his arm and he was pretty purple. And my dad had to start doing CPR, and the ambulance came and they came inside and they gave him like 2 rounds of Narcan. I think they gave him like 1.2 of Narcan or something. And that didn't work, so they took him over to Altaview and we followed over in the ambulance. And it was probably like 30 minutes after we got there. His heart would restart, but then it just wouldn't stay. And so they were like, do you guys want us to put him on a ventilator? Do you want us to do like life-saving measures or whatever? But he'd already been home, or we had already been home for an hour when he was in there, so it had been like probably like 2 to 3 hours without oxygen to your brain. So there's not really much left. So we were like, we've always, like my family's very open about death even before it started, like before my brother passed away. And we all knew that he didn't want to be like on a ventilator or do that kind of thing. Like if his brain wasn't there, he didn't really want to be there. We all got to go in before like they turned off the machines, and it was really special, but super weird, super weird. But my friends were great. Like Summer came to the hospital and Annie came to the hospital, but super weird. I don't even know how to explain it.
Does it get easier?
No. Definitely not. I probably cry in my car every day about it. But it's not necessarily a sad cry. It's like I'm really glad that he doesn't have to struggle with it anymore. So I'm happy for him and that he doesn't have to deal with those things.
How old was he at the time?
27. And we went to a bunch of AA meetings together and a bunch of like family of addicts meetings and things like that. And then he would always be the one to tell me like when he would relapse. So I was always the first one to know. Because we were just best friends.
Because you guys were best friends?
Mm-hmm. And he was super ashamed, and he really wanted help, so he would always come to me to talk about it. And he would come and climb in bed with me in the morning and just tell me that he had messed up. And then I knew. And then I'd walk him upstairs to my parents, and we'd go have like a big family talk after that. When they told me that he was gay, I was like, what do you mean? Like, he likes boys. And I'm like, okay. And like, it wasn't a big deal to me, but then everybody else kind of made it a big deal because we grew up in an LDS family. So everybody really handled it really well, but it was more like neighbors and the ward, they were so apologetic about it. And it's like, why are we being sorry? Like, it's exciting that he's like figured out who he is. I didn't know what I believed. I just believed the church, and like, oh, I go to church every Sunday. You just sing songs in primary, and in young women's you like quilt, you know? You don't talk about what it really means. So I definitely, as soon as my parents explained to me, I was like, holy shit, I'm never going to church ever again. Like, there's no way. We went for probably like a year, and then my brother actually sat me down and he's like, why do you still go to church? And I was like, oh, I just go because we've just always gone. And he's like, it really hurts my feelings when you go to church. And I was like, oh, like I had no idea it was affecting him at all. So then I stopped going after that. He loved the idea of like a God or like a heavenly father or something like that. So it was actually really hard for him because he really wanted to go back to church and kind of have that like base because he grew up with that, and it's like a very comforting base if you've ever been to church, or like if you grew up Mormon or anything, it's very a part of who you are. So it was super like world crashing for him to not have like church to go to on Sundays. So he tried to find a church that he could go to for a while. Like my dad would go with him to the weirdest churches like every Sunday just to try to find one he could relate to. And he's like, I don't want to find anybody else's church. Like I just want my church to love me for who I am.
Did the church reject him after he came out?
I mean, not to his face, but they have a very clear stance on their opinions about that kind of thing. And I think they're getting better a little bit, and I think like the members are better about it, but I don't know. I think a lot of his problems with drugs could have definitely been avoided if things were different in that stance. He basically said that he felt like he could do anything he wanted in life because he was already going to go to hell because he was gay. So he was like, it doesn't really matter what I do from here on out because I'm already going to go to hell, so I might as well do whatever. So I think that's kind of why he started doing drugs, because not only was he super anxious and feeling completely rejected about being gay, it was like he started doing the drugs to make himself feel better. And then after that, it was like, well, I'm already going to hell anyway, so I might as well just keep going because it makes me feel normal, and it makes him feel numb, is what he would tell me. But it's weird because my parents were so great. Like, I don't think my parents could have done anything different. I definitely, like in a negative way, I definitely have more anxiety than I've ever had. I also kind of have like separation anxiety a little bit. So like, I never moved out when I graduated high school because I didn't want to leave my parents. And then I think in a positive way, I definitely like, especially for my job, I think it's given me a whole different perspective than a lot of my coworkers have or that they've ever told me. Just like I said before, like a lot of nurses with these homeless patients who are addicts, or even just these addicts that we get, it's very judgmental, and it's always like, oh, it's just another drug addict. I just feel like I definitely have like a more sympathetic view towards these kind of patients, and I try not to judge them as hard because I definitely know what it's like for them and for what their families have gone through. This is a really hard thing, and it's really impressive that they came into the hospital to get help. Like, that's a huge accomplishment on their part, so we should be congratulating them for being here, not for, giving them repercussions that they're doing drugs in the first place. I mean, yes, they should be held accountable and know that what they're doing is wrong, but they already know that for the most part, especially if they're there to get help. So I definitely think it's made me a way better nurse than I would have been. I definitely don't judge anybody as hard as I used to. I used to be super judgmental when I was younger because, I don't know, kind of with the culture around here, I feel like a lot of people are judgmental about things, and you want to come off as like the perfect family, or, like, I don't have any issues whatsoever. Like, nobody I know suffers from this. And it's like, no, everybody does. Like, everybody has their problems. Some people are just way better at hiding it than others. So I think it's definitely made me a more accepting person. And I mean, it sucks, but I'm super grateful for everything that he went through for me.
I didn't want help. I wanted to forget everything. I wanted a redo and a quick fix. However, 3 weeks after coming home from school, losing my relationship with my best friend, and destroying my family, I went to live in Costa Rica for 3 months to receive treatment. People called it wilderness, I called it treehab. Whatever way you looked at it, it was hard. It was dealing with the shit you never wanted to deal with. Admitting I had a drinking problem, dependent personality disorder, major depressive disorder, and panic attack disorder. And for 11 weeks, I lived with 10 to 15 people who all had struggles, and I've never felt more connected to a group of people. These people became my family away from home. A little piece of me will always belong to Costa Rica because I strongly believe that was my first step in my recovery to happiness.
My struggles and challenges are on the forefront. Like, I don't think there's people that know me that don't know I'm very open with who I am. My challenges and struggles all started after my parents got divorced. Like, being the oldest, they didn't tell us why they got divorced or like what was going on. And I was bullied when I was younger, like 6 and 7 years old. And so I, by like a neighborhood guy, and who was much older than me, and so right then is when I started to like think there was something wrong with me. Like, why isn't he like me? I'm not doing anything, and he's just being rude to me all the time and making fun of me. And I think maybe someone had done that to him, and that's all I knew, because after he started bullying me, I wasn't nice to my siblings. I was like a bully to them, so it like kind of like got pushed on like down the line some more. So that's when I first like started feeling like I'm not good enough, that core issue that there's something wrong with me. When my parents got divorced and they didn't explain why, I was like, oh, it must be my fault, like something I did. And you know, their separation was really hard because like I guess I was in shock, and I got really angry, and I didn't know what was going on.
All of us have had trauma. We've all had, situations and relationships that have hurt us, and we've all had things that we've had to work through. And, the strength is talking about it and working through it and figuring out, how can I move on and be better from this?
A year and a half like went on, or 2, and my dad started dating my friend Alex's mom, who lived right across the street. My dad started dating her, and it was really good, and I was like, whoa, my life is like getting back. Like, I'm gonna have a brother again, and it's gonna work out. But one night she actually left on her bullet bike, and we were all out front working on Alex's 4-wheeler, and before she left, I was like, hey, Lisa, you should put your helmet on. She's like, oh, I'll be all right. I'm just going around the block. And as she came back, like, around the block, she pulled the front brake instead of the clutch. We don't really know, like, what happened. But she went over and hit her head and ended up passing away. And so that was super traumatic, being 12 years old. And I'd never seen my dad so hysterical and Alex so hysterical. And right when things were going up, it was like another, no, sorry. And so like I got super depressed and angry and mad, and then I went to high school and got introduced to weed for the first time when I was a freshman. And the first time I smoked weed, it took all that pain away that I'd been feeling for so long, for so many years. But little did I know that it was developing a habit or an addiction to what, like, when things got hard, I knew where to go and I wouldn't face my problems. And so, and that continued to progress and get worse and worse and worse throughout high school, to the point, like, where my senior year, my parents were super worried about me and sent me to a residential treatment center, and which I didn't like at all. It was indoors, and it was just really hard for me.
Therapy is absolutely relationship-based, and so in order to have any movement with your clients and be able to help them move forward with their goals, you have to have a relationship. I say to my clients often, Every person in this world could benefit from therapy. You are showing up to therapy, and that's the difference.
My life becomes really unmanageable. And I was actually talking to Sierra before this, and she's like you physically change, like it's not even you. It's not, and it's I'm wild, and I just don't care. I won't stop, and I won't stop using, and then it progresses to alcohol and other drugs, and cocaine, or all of it, and it just gets worse. And every time I have a period of being clean and then going back out and using weed or starting with that, every time it gets worse, to the point where this last go around, I'm lucky. I just feel lucky to be alive, I got T-boned going really fast and in a car, and should have lost my life, and just multiple incidents where I should have gotten in trouble with the law, but I didn't. And there's something greater for me to be doing than just using drugs and numbing out, because every time I use drugs, I'm trying to avoid something. And it's been a coping mechanism and an addiction that's been created because of so long I've ran to that when things get hard, or even when things are good. I think, okay, I'm good. I got this under control. I can try it again. But then it's like a switch in my brain, and I get really unmanageable. I don't want to. I hate the fact that I have to say I'm an addict, I'm addicted. It's something I have to work on daily, because when I don't keep that in the forefront of my mind, or think it'll be different, or I could go out and use again, it never gets better. When you experience life naturally, exactly how it is right now, and with real meaning and purpose, it's really cool. It's fun, and I was looking to chase happiness or relief from something in a substance, but really that happiness and relief comes from within, not in some artificial substance. It's more of, I'm gonna face these, I'm gonna work through these, and I'm gonna experience this process. And I've really come to believe that that's why, for me, why I've come to Earth, and having an Earth experience here. It's I've been given these trials, these challenges, these struggles that I didn't want. I don't want to be a drug addict, but it's rewriting my history and changing these things and becoming who I always have known I could be within. If I could look at myself right in the eyes in that moment, I would just tell myself that you're enough, that I love you, and that you can do this, and that it's worth it, I have to tell myself that every day, actually. I have to look in the mirror and be like, you can do this, because there's still days that are really hard where it's I don't want to do this. I wish this wasn't the reality of my life at times, but all I can do now is learn from it and move forward. And I think that's what I have been doing, and it's cool to know that I don't have to be this person for my rest of my life. I don't have to be defined by my past.
5 years from now, what are you going to be doing?
5 years from now.
10 years from now.
10 years.
Where are you going to be at?
I don't know.
Where do you want to be?
10 years from now, I'll be 35. I want to be a father. Yeah. 10 years from now, I'd love to have my own facility for people to come and get help, and have it be adventure, outdoor based. If I don't have my own, I'd love to be working at one of those and helping people do that. And I'd love to be able to be fully healed from these limiting beliefs that I still feel right now that kind of trap me in. That I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. I want to be free from those beliefs.
I live in Salt Lake City now, a part of another treatment program. 2,000 miles from home, 2 months sober. I'm recreating my life. Every day is not perfect, but every day I get to wake up and know that I'm still trying, and to me, that matters most. My journey is unique, but my struggles are not. No one is alone. No one is without hope. This is real and it's happening, and the longer we sit and act like it's not, the quicker we lose people we love. I'm grateful to have struggled, and even more grateful my journey didn't end a year ago.
I had a son, Devin Wolf, who committed suicide in 2014. He was bigger than life. He was an amazing kid, an amazing man. He was thoughtful and soft-hearted, and my best friend, which I don't know how many parents can say that their child is their best friend, but he was definitely mine. And I miss him a lot. I miss him every day. There was no indication that he was depressed or that he had been struggling. He was also very impulsive, as a lot of 17-year-olds are. And part of being bigger than life is that you always have to be on, right? So he didn't complain about that, but our personalities are similar, and so I can appreciate that feeling of maybe always feeling like you have to be on. He would light up a room. He was extremely talented artist. He drew and painted. He took art classes, and the instructor would send him back repeatedly, go work on it longer, you haven't spent enough time. And he'd say, no, it's done. Look, it's done. And it was remarkable and good. And so, with impulsivity and patience comes with that too. He was high anxiety. I actually identified that I probably had struggled with anxiety by watching him deal with anxiety. I didn't recognize it in myself. And when I recognized it in my son, I was able to start to identify, wow, we all are kind of high anxiety. Devin did not leave a note or an explanation. He went to his guitar lesson the night that he took his own life. He saw his friends. He was recording music. He was doing all the things he loved. And so it's hard to understand where the switch was thrown or what the thought process was. He literally talked to me about everything. Girls and sex and drugs, and calling me from a friend's house and telling me that he's shrooming. And I mean, if you didn't know him and you didn't know us as a mother-son, it may sound strange, but I knew everything except for the most important thing, which was that he was struggling with maybe wanting to live. And that's a really hard thing to swallow when you're in the field, even though you know logically that the impulsivity plays a part, and he may not have planned, he may not have attended, but this is what happened. But I should have known is one of those things that you beat yourself up with, or how could I have not known? And the guitar teacher says the same thing because he's known Devin for many years and didn't see anything.
All right, sing with us now, all right? Whoa, 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 come on. Whoa. Never had it in him to surrender to all the people who take part.
Skyline High School, they put notes on all the lockers that says you matter and we see you and things like that to try to have people identified. But you have a kid who is bigger than life, And most people think, oh my gosh, if this kid didn't think it was worth living, then what do I have to live for? So it actually has a fairly negative impact across the board. You have football stars at Juan Diego take their own lives. You have our valleys just riddled with these stories. One of the things I've thought about is how would parents trust their kids to me when I lost my own kid? And they do. And the kids seek me out because they know I get it. And I think a lot of our young people think that because they don't want to feel pain, the only option is to actually die and to leave this earth and to leave these families and these people and these friends. And maybe something I would say to be encouraging would be, we all feel great pain and none of us like it. But when you escape pain through suicide, you just pass it on to everybody else that you've left behind. It doesn't go away. To want to avoid pain, right? Hey, don't touch the hot stove. We teach that to our toddlers. That's normal. But to want to hurt yourself or to kill yourself, that's not normal. So if you're thinking and feeling that you want to hurt yourself, if you're identifying ways to actually take your own life, then that's when you know you need help. I don't like pain either. And after I lost my son, I was really wanting to escape the pain. If I could have just walked into the ocean and never come back, I thought that that would be a good option. I didn't really want to die. I didn't want to hurt myself. I just didn't want to feel the pain anymore.
How do you run away from your problems when they're all in your head? Answer, you don't. Whether you live for the highs or just to push through the lows, live for you. Mental health is not a choice, but if you never accept the help, you will forever be stuck in the what ifs. We're here, we're alive. Be here, be alive. Laugh at the happy things, cry at the sad, but never let those dictate who you are or how much worth you have. Love those around you because you never know what tomorrow will bring. Most of all, love yourself. Forgive yourself because the past won't change, and each and every time we feel like we're falling apart, remember sometimes we need to fall apart to fall back together.
My name is Anna Heiss, and we stand together.
My name is Tilly McLeod, and we stand together.
My name's Emily Meekum, and we stand together.
My name's Chris Gemmel, and we stand together.
I am Keaton Perkins, and we stand together.
My name is Katie Rose, and we stand together.
Thank you to everyone that has participated in the documentary. It takes a lot of courage and bravery to talk about these very sensitive and difficult issues. So I admire each and every one of the individuals in this documentary that has shared their story.
I'd like to say to the people in this documentary, thank you. Because every person that comes forward and tells their story reduces stigma and allows someone who's scared to get help or scared to talk about their problem, it allows them, so it gives them an avenue. It's okay to talk about this. And so by coming forward with their stories, breaking down stigma, recognizing these illnesses can happen to anybody, and that you can get treatment and go on to have a great life but you may have to struggle for it. There may be some struggles. Their stories are going to be really helpful to other people.
I think it's great that you guys are willing to take the time and energy, and that people were vulnerable and shared. And I hope that if one person gains any kind of insight or hope, then I think it's beneficial. So thank you guys for doing the work.